Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the She Runs Strong podcast, which is powered by Coach Parry with Shona, myself, and Nikki. Lovely to have you all back here. And today we're diving into a few more questions from our members in our forum. Some questions in and around insomnia. It's an excellent question around posture and running up hills, and also some interval training and easy running. So, as always, I've got Nikki Friedman with me here today. Nikki, how are things? How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thanks. Yep, I'm really, really good. I'm just in the throes of having quite a good couple of weeks of training. I've got a 10K coming up. Well, it's just a 10K in Lisbon, I suppose. But the rest of my friends are all running a half marathon, but I opted for the 10K. And so I'm training for the 10K in Lisbon in a couple, what was it, about 5, 6, 7 weeks time? So I'm in the throes of that. So, yeah.
I love it. Well, Nikki, I want to just sorry, and I'm cutting you off, but I just want to make a little quick comment there on what you said. You're like, it's just the 10K. A, it's in Lisbon, which is really cool. Okay, so traveling for a race is always cool, and B, and I do it as well. So take this from where it comes. But I get tired of when we say, it's just a 10K or it's just a half marathon. I hear females say this all the time, and it's not just 10Ks. It's still 10Ks, right? It's still a half marathon. It's still 13.1 miles. And I wish we would celebrate those as much as we celebrate. I mean, and I love the marathon, I love the marathon distance, but yeah, let's start celebrating all the distances. I always say if you put your running shoes on, you go right foot, left foot, right foot, you're a runner, and we need to celebrate that either way, right?
So, it always feels a bit more funkier though to go for a destination marathon when you say you're going to Lisbon to run the 10K. But for me, I just really love the 5 or 10K distance, and I love training for them. And actually, if you train for them, it is quite hard training if you want to do really well in them. I mean, I can knock out a distance of a 10K, no problem. But actually to do well, which I'd like to for this one, then it is harder. So, but it just doesn't seem as funky to say, I'm going to Lisbon to do a 10K. Anyway, that's enough about my training. How's your training going? You must be, we've got 2 oceans, so marathon training then. How's that going at the moment?
Speaks of marathon training, I still need to qualify for 2 oceans. So that's a sub 5 marathon, which I'm confident that I'll do. But, it's still a marathon. It's still the distance.
Yes,
and in the throes of that, it's in a couple of weeks. So I'm in peak marathon training now. So I'm tired, but good tired, not fatigued. It's normal marathon peak kind of training. But I love it. Marathon is my favorite distance. And then 2 Oceans Ultra, which is in April, and that'll be my 6th. So aiming for 10 of those so I can get my blue number. So hopefully it's a goodie. But
so when do you have to qualify by? Is there a date that you have to have done this marathon by, or?
I'm mistaken if I get this wrong, but it's normally the beginning of March that we have to get it done.
So you're thick in it. Fantastic, good stuff, excellent.
But let's jump into our first question. The first one is from Kathy, and Kathy is from Burbank in California, and she says, I'm really struggling with low energy this week, and I'm pretty certain that I'm fueling my training correctly. I feel like I'm sleeping well, but I'm just really, really tired. Do you have any suggestions for me? Nikki, where would we even start with that?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I mean, there's quite a few things. So, I mean, in answering her, we just sort of look to unpack a little bit. Is she doing too much? Is she got enough recovery in the week? Is she sleeping enough? So she needs to take a look at her sleep. Is her nutrition? She says she thinks that's pretty much on par. And her stress levels. Is there something unusual with her going on in life at the moment? Is she dealing with something? And then often the first place to look is to look at her running and just have a look at her easy running. And this is so common for someone who's relatively new to running or even quite mature in running age. It's just, how is her easy running looking? Is she actually running easy enough? And I think if we were to look at Kathy and go into her training schedule, just chatting to her about her easy running, it's just a really common mistake. I think as well, if you're quite busy and you're just bombing around life, you quite often bomb around your run as well. And so I would suspect that her running, if she took it back a notch, just the easy runs, I mean, not necessarily with the intervals and stuff, but if she just took it back and perhaps did that talk test and just checked that she actually is running easy enough, then it might be that she doesn't get quite as tired over the course of the week. Running shouldn't be exhausting you unless you're in really deep marathon training where you're doing a lot of long runs. But in day to day, your easy runs should feel really, really super easy. And you should come out of an easy run feeling like you could have run a lot more. And so if she's feeling tired, then I suspect, firstly, having a look at her easy runs will be the way to go forwards on that. And to monitor if it is easy enough, I would suggest to her to do the talk test and just check that she can chat the whole time that she's running, and not puff chatting, like proper comfortable chatting, like you're just chatting with a friend if you were like on a dog walk or something like that. So not puff chatting, not just being able to throw out some words, just some really easy. And then you really know that you're in that nice, comfortable zone. I think that's what I would look at first with her, is the easy running. Are your easy runs easy enough?
Yeah.
And talk test is a great way to check. How would you do that? Would you also look at the talk test there, or what?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a couple of things. And I think the thing is that if you ask Kathy, I think if you asked her straight off the bat and you said, Kathy, are you running easy enough? She'll go, yes, of course I am. Because everyone I speak to always says I'm running easy enough. But if you really, really looked at that and did like the talk test, like Nikki's suggesting, you would realize that your easy probably isn't easy enough. And if you run alone, we often advocate for the song test. So burst into song, and see if you can hold that song without getting out of breath. That's another way. But physiologically, the other metrics that we can use as well. If you have a chest strap that you measure your heart rate with, we could then use heart rate as a measure to see if you are running in the correct sort of zone, or easy enough, as we say. And so we would then use threshold heart rate or threshold pace to then base your particular prescription or zones out of. So what we would then do is you do a hard 5K effort or 30-minute effort, so running as hard as you can in a sustained way for those 30 minutes or for the 5K plus or minus, and then taking your average heart rates during that, and then we work on 75 to 80% of that threshold heart rate, which is the average heart rate during that test, which would then give you your easy pace. And very often people go, okay, well then I feel like I have to be walking, that's so, and that is the case. If that is the case, that is where your physiology is. And remember that we're not looking for the body to respond to our watches. We need our watches to respond to our physiology. And so that's the internal measure. And so if that does mean you need to walk a little bit more, then add in some walk breaks as well. But if you're feeling tired, I absolutely agree, Nikki. This is something you can go and try tomorrow. Just slow that easy run down a little bit. And then we often say slow, and that freaks people out. Just make sure that run is easy. And I'm telling you now, it'll change your energy levels throughout the week, because you're automatically going to have the same benefits of all you need, but at less cost to your body. And just it's going to help with that.
Absolutely.
Fatigue.
And I think getting that heart rate strap and monitoring your heart rate, if you're not entirely sure, is a great way to give your internal to monitor internally, so you can then start to really dial into it. If you can't feel it yourself, then get yourself a run watch and a heart rate strap and monitor it for a month or so that you can then dial into it really easily every time you go out and run. I think it'd be a great way.
Nikki, we did a deep dive on pacing in one of our first episodes. So go back and have a look at that, Kathy. It was one of the first or second episodes, and where we really dive into pacing, and maybe just go in there and have a look and get some extra info in there to guide you along the way.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good question. Yeah. And hopefully after a couple of weeks of running a bit easier, you'll start to feel a bit more energized rather than having the low energy you're talking about there. So good one, Kathy. All right, next question. Okay, so this question was titled, Insomnia is going to steal my running. So that's very dramatic. But here we go. This was from Jessica Hunter in the US. And she says, I slept hang on a minute, I slept until about 2 and then basically rested. I feel so tired, but the sleep just won't come. As I lay there awake, getting closer to when I plan to get up for my run, I know I'm not going to make it out there today. Then anxiety starts. So I just have to decide my plan is not going to work today. And I have to be okay with that. Being okay with it doesn't mean I have to give up, though. Would it be a good adjustment to my schedule to do strength today if I switch up what I did yesterday, then move today's run to tomorrow? Am I okay to run Wednesday and Thursday? Oh, there's quite a lot in there. Right, okay. Are you good? So
Yep.
what do you think, Shona?
I think, I mean, there is a lot in there, but I think the key just to take out from that. So one, she feels like insomnia is stealing her running, which I absolutely love as you know, just a concept, right? And yeah, so sorry, Nikki. Yeah, as a basic concept, I think that is exactly it. Is that you know, insomnia is really making her struggle, but to finish off there, she's saying, can she adjust her plan to make up for that? Because she is just really exhausted and anxiety just hitting in. So, yes, I think that's the key aspect here is that the plan is there and it does provide structure and routine, but we're not married to it. It doesn't have to be, you know, militant about it. And we need to adapt our plan, you know, if these things are coming up. So, yeah, I absolutely love that she's adapted it to then say, I'll rather do strength today. I'm available to run Wednesday and Thursday as an example. So let's move that around to help suit her a little bit. Nikki, you wanted to say something. I think your mic was muted. What
I know. My husband's sort of like banging around in the background there. Sorry, apologies, guys. No, I think, you know, I was just saying about the title, like it's a great title, but it's a shame that she's suffering from it. And it's a big thing. If you can't sleep, if you can't recover, you know, how do you kind of like move forward in your plan? And so she's done a good job there by adapting and just shuffling things around. And I think doing that internal check, that self-check in the morning, and then saying, right, well, what can I do today? What is going to work for me? And how am I going to make the best of today for where I want to get to tomorrow is definitely a good way. I think you had spoken about having a short nap as well during the day and sometimes could help.
You know, look, I love sleep, okay, and I love a nap, okay. So, you know, if there's time for a nap, I'll have it. You know, but obviously, if you struggle with insomnia, you don't want to nap too long because then that's going to affect your evening sleep. And so there is actually scientific research to advocate for having an ideal time for a nap is 20 to max 30 minutes. That's almost what the literature is saying. And so there was a study I read that said, you know, have a cup of coffee or like an espresso or something before you go for your nap so that by the time the caffeine kicks in, which is normally around 20 to 30 minutes, it wakes you up from your nap, which I've done quite well. And I know, Nikki, you utilize that as well.
Yep. It works a treat, that does, I think. And if you can just cope, but if she's really insomnia, it might be that sometimes if you need that much sleep, it's quite difficult. But if you're just needing that little power nap, that little sort of disco nap, as some of my friends call it, that's a great way to do it and stuff, just to help you push on through a little bit.
Yeah. I think other things to consider though, Nikki, you know, just and these are side points and very in-depth sort of conversations as well, but to consider menopause hormonal therapy or HRT, you know, because it does really, insomnia is a menopausal symptom. It is a symptom of menopause. Not to go into that, but just to chat to a physician to see if she is a candidate for that. And then just from my side, I struggle with, for the listeners who don't know, I struggle with major depressive disorder. And I find that when I have and I sleep really well normally, but if I'm going through moments of insomnia, it just feels like my depression is heightening up again. So yeah, just you know, perhaps just to maybe, Jessica, just to think about that, and if that is something that you struggle with, to just look into that if that is an aspect for you.
So yeah, so there could be other factors that are affecting, because the iron's the same. Low iron would cause you disruption in sleep, hormones, you know, a number of things there can really influence that. So kind of getting on top of, so maybe a chat with a physician. We quite often harp on about that, but
yeah, have a look at those other aspects for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully you get that sorted, Jessica. But I love the title. We might steal it from you if that's
Yes.
okay. Let's go into our next question. It's from Melissa. Melissa's based in Cape Town in South Africa, and she says, "Hi team. I really struggle when running up hills or doing hill repeats. I feel like my legs are fine and strong enough to go, but I often feel like it's my posture that's slowing me down. Is there a correct posture or a way to run up hills, Nikki?" If you want to recover from sessions faster, not feel tired all the time, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join me in my upcoming training specifically for female runners over the age of 45. In it, I'll share with you my simple 5-step framework that'll transform your running. Simply scan the QR code on screen now or click on the link in the description to save your seats in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So cool. Look, hill repeats, they are a really good addition into your training plan. And yes, they make you really, really strong. A lot of people kind of often pick too steep a hill to start with. So make sure your hill is more of a gradual hill as opposed to a really steep hill. Okay. And then when you're standing at the bottom of that hill, you want to just set yourself up in a correct posture to start with. Okay, so that's often people just bang into these repeats, but just set yourself up nice and tall. Sort of think about holding your shoulders down and round, and then lifting your hips up a little bit high and almost like they're forwards. And then you want to think about looking up that hill. But imagine someone has tied a wee harness around your hips area, and then somebody is pulling that harness, and that is what you want to feel is being pulled up the hill by your hips almost, so that they are just really aligned. So your body's lovely and tall, and that's often what we mean. I mean, you're going to lean into the hill slightly, there's no question of that. But what I see a lot of people do when they're quite new to hills is they kind of sit down a little bit into their body, and they almost stick their bum out the back. But by roughly just like switching your glutes on, and we're not talking about clenching them, we're just talking about switching them on, bringing your hips forward, and then imagining that rope is pulling you up the hills, and then just that's the kind of nice tall posture and leaning into the hills to do a nice, and not having too steep a hill is going to set you up well for doing strong hill repeats there. So really it is about good posture. It is about finding that correct posture. It is about straightening up your body. Little touch of engagement on your glutes. And that sometimes people struggle a little bit with that, but you just have to play around and find that kind of good engagement. And then, looking up and looking where you're going to, not looking down at the ground too much, because that will hunch you up as well. So that's tugging you up. What about you, Shona? Anything to add on to that? Did I cover it?
No, you covered everything. I just want to reiterate that the activating, which I hate the word activating, but turning on of the glutes is that feeling of someone pulling you at your hips will force you to go from this angle with the bum sticking out here, and someone's pulling you. You're going to get that.
Yes.
And what's going to happen is the glutes are then going to drive you up. So I think it is good to think about turning the glutes on, but automatically, if you imagine someone's pulling you up that hill, you are going to engage your glutes straight away. That's why that's such a good cue. Yep. So no, spot on there. Yep. And then I'll just add, just because I'll add it every single opportunity I get, is that strength training is going to really help you with hills. Okay, so every opportunity I get, I'm going to mention that. But yes, that's
absolutely. Well, if you can't hold your body up tall and straight, then you're not going to be strong running up a hill. So absolutely, strength training is going to pay a lot of dividends to holding your body in a good posture.
Definitely.
So, and using your arms.
Yes, actually, yes, as well. So I find, a lot of people tend to clench, so they get stuck here and then they do this, they rotate side to side, as opposed to really using your arms to help you drive. And again, I love that cue of feeling like you're being tugged up, because then you almost do use your arms to help you drive up a little bit more. Yeah, absolutely.
We see that in track, actually. obviously it's not running up a hill, but when they're on the track and we immediately get them to raise their hips up or feel like someone's pulling forward or using the arms, just using one of those cues will be enough for them to run a faster lap. And they're like, gosh, I didn't even try anything different. I didn't try to run harder. I just focused on having my hips and being pulled or using my arms to drive. And then it just naturally makes you that little bit faster without even putting in extra effort. So yeah, it's a good one, that one. So posture is always key in running. Just being nice and tall is always good.
Good.
Nice one, Melissa. Right. Okay. Next question from Vicky in Edinburgh. Oh my, Edinburgh. Right.
I do love Edinburgh, Nikki. So it's one of my favorite cities. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay. She used to do a lot of yoga. More recently, I have not managed to do as much with my marathon training in full swing. Oh yeah, time constraints. I can feel this on my runs as I constantly feel stiff and tight. Should I make time for this again, or is there something else I should be doing?
Awesome question. And this ties into my love of mobility, right? So yoga is such a good form of mobility work. Of course, it has elements of strength as well, which we love to have, and is good for running. So yes, I would absolutely, if you can make time for it, Melissa. Sorry, this is Vicky. Apologies, Vicky. Yeah, if you can make time for it, I would say trying to get a one yoga session in a week will be really, really good. But don't do this at the expense of strength training, right? So, in terms of order of priority, let's not throw strength out the window to do yoga. Yoga is a great form of strength, but we need resistance training. Okay, so first and foremost, that would be the first thing. Don't do it at the expense of your resistance training. But if you can't make time for it, if it is a time concern, I would say try to fit in 2 to 3 20-minute sessions of mobility per week. So if that is yoga, or if it is just straight up mobility where you're looking at, things like hip mobility, lower limbs, some leg swings, some knee drops, some deep squats, things like that. It really, really does help with stride length for running. It helps with overall just aging and tighter muscles and joints. And then general being kind of sedentary, right, through our jobs. Like we're sitting all the time. You're sitting on public transport, or you're sitting in front of your computer for work. So mobility really, really does help with that. And so we're looking for, particularly as runners, in and around the hips, which yoga is excellent for, but general hip mobility will do. Everything's linked, so that'll help with the lower back, that'll help with the hip flexors, and everything, because the body's a chain, works in that sort of way. So looking at ankle mobility as well will also make a difference. And yeah, it definitely will make a difference to your running overall.
I mean, she's already said it there. She feels stiff and tight. So she knows. I mean, she's... I
think she's just asking for permission to find it again. And yes, I absolutely love yoga.
I think my best marathons have been when I've been consistent with yoga. And it's like all things. If you've got the time to do it, and that is often the thing, isn't it? Just but 20 minutes is probably all you need if you can do it. And now with online, you can just pick up a 10-minute somewhere or other. And certainly we have things like this on our platform. So, it's a great thing really to do, and just to add in before or after as you get up in the morning, or, there's always some, I bug my husband because we will be watching Netflix in the evening and I'll just jump onto the floor in front of the telly and start working through my cat cows or whatever, just to, because I'm just sat there anyway watching telly, and I just think, well, I can do 20 minutes. So, maybe you could just add it in when you're watching a bit of telly in the evening or anything. So I think, Vicky, you definitely want to add it back in again, because it's definitely going to pay some dividends. And I think yoga is brilliant, actually. If you can manage a full class once a week, then it's great relaxation, calming your system down. Just because marathon training is so intense that it actually does wonders in the whole of just bringing down your whole system and relaxation and breathing. So there is other benefits from yoga too.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And so if you can get that in, for sure. But I love your comments around the Netflix. I tend to do my foot exercises while watching Netflix, which is useful. But I think, like you say, so trying to get this in where you can. I have clients who like to do their mobility sessions as a part of their warm up before they run. You're going to stand there and do some leg swings anyways. You may as well add another 10 minutes to that. And I have other clients who like to wake up in the morning and start their day with like a 20 minutes of a mobility flow, which is also quite yoga-esque, So yeah, I think find a time that works for you, and yeah, 10 to 20 minutes 3 times a week is going to really do wonders. Yeah. So whether it's like Nikki in front of Netflix, or first thing in the morning, definitely will be helpful. So yeah. So Vicky, yep. And good luck with that marathon. Let us know how it goes, please.
Good luck.
And then Nao from Johannesburg, from my hometown. I love that. We've got Edinburgh and Josie in one. That's awesome. So she says, "Hi, coaches. I am new to the CP platform, and so new to the Coach Parry platform, and I'm following one of the beginner marathon plans. I've been running for about 6 months, and I'm tackling my first marathon very soon. I noticed that my plan does not have any interval sessions. Is this correct, considering I want to get faster to qualify for Comrades? And for those of you who don't know, to qualify for Comrades, you need a sub 4-hour-50 marathon." Yeah, Nikki, what is your response to Neo?
Okay, well, clearly, so she is a beginner runner, and she says she's been running for 6 months, but that really is still a beginner runner. And to move on to a marathon at that, just after 6 months of running, is still very early days. To be running marathons. And Comrades, bless her, she's really going for it quite quickly. So she's really ramping up, going from 0 to 60.
I know that's a South African madness about Comrades marathon, but yes, yeah. So considering other things,
that's quite a big ask. And as coaches, when people come to us saying these sort of things, we're like, okay, right. And generally, our first thought in this is like, we have to get them there safely without an injury. And that's the main thing. So the key is, like with building a house, is to build that foundation for them as safely as possible without them getting injured, to make the start lines of the marathon and of Comrades. And the easiest way and the safest way to do that is to build a solid aerobic base. And so, yes, in a beginner's marathon plan, you won't find intervals because they're not ready for that yet. They need to build that base and the foundation. Just like you would build a house, you need to build the foundations first to then build the house on top. Otherwise, it will just crumble. Otherwise, the runner will just get injured. So in a beginner's marathon plan, it will always be about consistent running and consistent strength training, and just building that weekly routine of running, week in, week out, month in, month out, to get them safely to the marathon. In terms of speed, people get really focused on speed. I need more speed for a marathon. Well, the main limiter, in fact, 99.9% of the time, is actually aerobic capacity is the main limiter for a marathon. So really building that base as big as you can is going to be what's going to pay the highest dividends and get you successfully through the marathon at the end and on to Comrades, if that's what you want to do. Whether you can hit the 450 is another question, and that would be something we would benchmark going along the way. But that is something, and it might be that this isn't your year for Comrades. Maybe next year is your year for Comrades. Maybe you need a bit more, because actually ramping up to an ultra such as that this quickly is, I think, a big ask. Not impossible. I don't know her background as well. I don't know whether she's done cycling or other sports, but if she is really new and beginners, then that's what I would be saying at this point. It's all about making sure she doesn't get injured and building that lovely aerobic base. What do you?
I was just going to go into a bit of the physiology as to why you're saying what you're saying. And really, when we're training for a marathon, most endurance aspects, we're using 2 energy systems, right? We're using our aerobic energy system and our anaerobic energy system. And to go into a bit of the physiology, I don't want to go into the details of all of that, but essentially what that, and it's not a one or another, right? So it's not like a switch where we now anaerobic or we aerobic, but we use one more than the other. So it's almost like a bit of a scale, or you could imagine, or a spectrum where we use one more than the other. And so when we're running a marathon, we need a highly developed aerobic system. Okay. And so by training aerobically, we improve the efficiency of the energy delivery. We improve the efficiency of how the oxygen gets sent from your mouth through the lungs, to the alveoli, to the blood, to the cells, to the mitochondria. And when we train at that aerobic phase, that we become more efficient at doing that. But if we train too close to the anaerobic line, right, so that's where we're not necessarily utilizing oxygen as much, we tend to put an increased demand on our anaerobic metabolism. So then we tend to detrain the aerobic system. So if we train too much of the speed stuff, we'll end up detraining the aerobic system. And what you need now, Neo, is to build that aerobic system first. Okay, so that's really the key aspect there. And yeah, I think just understanding that you're training for a race that is aerobic. Yes, we do utilize some higher intensity or interval work at some points in different plans, but that is very dependent on level and ability. But first, we have to build that aerobic system so that when you do push the line, you don't detrain the aerobic system, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You need to build those mitochondria, don't you? You need
well, that's exactly it. That's it. And so running in exactly. So when you're running in those zones or in that easier sort of run, that's what's happening. When I say you become more efficient, you become more efficient at transporting the oxygen around the system. There are more mitochondria that get created. So where you started off with X mitochondria in the cell, you now land up with double X mitochondria in the cell. I mean, these are arb numbers, and you then also become more efficient at getting rid of waste out of that cell that then comes out in the form of carbon dioxide. So when, as a beginner runner, you're not as efficient at utilizing and getting rid of that waste. And then as you get stronger and stronger to build that aerobic base, you do become more efficient at getting rid of the excess waste and waste products from the cell. So it is all about just building that up, which I think is really, really key.
Yeah. So definitely good aerobic base. I mean, that's it. And then if you're with us for a couple of years and you're still doing comrades back to backs and stuff, that's when we'd start to add in some intervals, maybe some strides, and get you safely started on that. But the main goal is to get you to the start line injury free and as fit as possible, and really that's your aerobic base. So that's what we do.
Nikki, if I can just add on to that, you say injury free, and that's quite key because, essentially interval training or high intensity training has an inherent risk of injury, right? And you mentioned that. And actually there's a study that they looked at where they looked at the effects of interval training on, I guess, VO2 max and the effects of endurance training on VO2 max. And using interval training did get VO2 max up and I guess fitness up quite quickly. But endurance training, while it took a little bit longer, lasts for longer, right? So it almost, if interval training is here, endurance training is here, but it just lasts for so much longer. And so you're playing a long game with endurance training. You definitely are. But the other thing to notice with these studies that they do on interval training is they only ever last 6 to 8 weeks long. The intervention is 6 to 8 weeks long because, as we understand as coaches and physiologists, is that if we do interval training over and over and over and over again, you're at a higher risk of injury. So yes, while you might get a good little uptake quite quickly, you put yourself at a higher risk of injury. And so that's also why we first want to build the base, build the foundation, as Nikki says, as opposed to building your house on a rickety kind of stand, essentially. So that's
a while to go to comrades. So you need that endurance. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. Good. All right. Well, Neo, I hope that answers your question, and we do look forward to helping you to comrades one day, and hopefully to many more, to some back-to-backs and all the rest. But
yes,
Nikki, as always, I love these Q&As. I hope you do too. Any parting shots from you? Any words of wisdom as we say goodbye?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot today. Actually, there's been a lot in there and stuff, and these are good, and we'll definitely get more questions. It'd be great if some folks sent in some videos questions as well, so we could get them on the podcast, the YouTube too. But it's been great. It's been good. How about yourself? Any question? No
questions. Just a closing comment. I just hope everyone stays safe and trains well and enjoys their running. I think that's that's really what we had to do. We had to hit some PBs and have fun at the same time. So
I agree.
hope everyone's enjoying that. And yeah, thanks, Nikki, for your time as always. And we'll see you guys all next week.
Bye.